Her name tells you what she is. In Irish, she is the Banshee, and the words mean woman of the fairy mound. The English word Banshee is simply that name worn smooth by centuries of foreign tongues. To understand her, you have to understand the mounds she belongs to. This is Myths from the Shadows, where every culture hides a secret waiting to be told. Subscribe and join the Myth Keepers, because some stories must never be forgotten. Across Ireland, the land is marked by ancient hills and barrows and grassy raths. To the people who lived among them, these were not empty earth. They were the Sidhe, the dwellings of a hidden race. That race was the Sidhe, the people of the mounds. The old tradition explains them through a story of conquest. Long before written memory, Ireland was held by the Tuatha De Danann, a people of gods and magic. Then came the Milesians, the ancestors of the Gaels, and the old gods were beaten. They did not die, the story says, they went down. The Tuatha De Danann withdrew beneath the surface of the country, into the mounds and the hollow hills. There they remained. As the generations passed, the folk memory shrank them. The gods of one age became the fairies of the next, smaller and stranger, but never gone. The Banshee is one of these. She is a woman of that buried people, and her business with the living is narrow and exact. She comes for death, and for nothing else. To understand her cry, you have to know how the Irish once grieved. When a person died, the women of the community would gather over the body and raise the Kincora, the keen. It was not quiet weeping. It was a loud, rhythmic, formal lament, half song and half cry. It filled the house of the dead from the moment of death until the burial. This was real work and skilled work. The finest keening women, the Mana Kinche, were known across whole districts. They were called to the funerals of important people. A great death deserved a great lament. The more voices that rose over the coffin, the more weight the dead person was understood to have carried in life. Some keeners were paid for their grief, in coin and in drink. The trade left its own hard marks on the women who lived by it. The Banshee is that keen lifted out of the human world and given to the other one. Her cry is the Kincora sung by something that is not alive and not quite dead. When the living keened over a body, they mourned a death that had already come. When the Banshee keens, the body is still warm and breathing. She mourns ahead of time. Her grief runs in front of the death, not behind it. The Banshee does not wail for everyone. This is one of the best-known rules of her tradition. She attaches herself to families, and she keeps her grief for them alone. The lineages most often named are the great Gaelic houses. They are the O'Briens, the O'Neills, the O'Connors, the O'Gradys, and the Kavanaghs. These were the old families of native Irish blood, and the Banshee was bound to them across the generations. The rule was sometimes drawn even more sharply. She was said to keen only for the descendants of the pure Milesian stock. Those were the families whose roots reached back into Gaelic Ireland itself. By this reckoning, she would not raise her voice for a man of Norman or Saxon descent. Nor would she come for anyone whose people had arrived later. You can still read the rule in the surnames. Many of the families said to have a Banshee carry the O or the Mac. Those are the marks of a name native to the old Celtic world, not the Norse, the English, or the Norman. There were exceptions, and they are worth holding on to. The Banshee was sometimes said to keen for a person who had been gifted with music and song, whatever their blood. Music was held to be a gift from the fairy world. It could earn a place in her grief that birth alone never would. Keep that exception in mind. Later in this story it will explain one of the strangest accounts ever set down about her. The belief is far older than any book, but there is a first time she appears in writing. Around the year 1380, a scholar named Sean Mockcra composed the Car Aim Her Ilva, the Triumphs of Turlough. It is a long account of war among the great families of Munster. In its pages, the Banshee is already present, already keening, already bound to a noble line. By the late 14th century, she was not a new idea. She was an old one being set down at last. That same tradition gives one Banshee a name and a rank above all the others. Her name was Aibell, and she belonged to the O'Briens. She was no solitary spirit drifting at a window. Aibell was a queen among her kind, said to rule over 25 other Banshees who attended her. To understand what she was, you have to follow her to the one night her story is best remembered. It is the eve of one of the most famous battles in Irish history. Aibell was the guardian spirit of the Dalcashans, the clan of Brian Boru, and later of the O'Briens who came after them. Her home was a fairy mound called Craig Leah, the Grey Rock, on a hill above Killa in County Clare. It stood near Kincora, the royal seat of Brian himself. She did not announce death with a wail alone. Aibell carried a golden harp, and it was said that whoever heard its music did not live long after. In the year 1014, the aged Brian Boru, High King of Ireland, marched to face a great host of Vikings and their Irish allies. The two armies met at Clontarf, near Dublin, on Good Friday. The night before the battle, the tradition says, Aibell came to the king. She had come to tell him plainly that he would not leave the field alive. In some tellings, she appeared to him washing bloodied garments in a stream, working until the water ran red. The image was far older than herself. Brian heard her, and he understood, and he marched anyway. There is a second thread to the night, and it is the saddest one. Aibell loved a warrior named Dunlang O'Hartigan, who served at the side of Brian's son Murracha. Came to Dunlang and begged him not to fight. She offered him a long reprieve, a span of years and happiness far beyond the mortal life. He needed only to stay away from Clontarf. She is even said to have given him a cloak that would hide him from sight and keep him from harm. All he had to do was abandon the battle and live. Dunlang refused her. He would not leave Murracha to face the enemy without him, whatever it cost. So he set aside the gift of years and rode to the ford of war beside the men of his king. The prophecy held to the letter. The Irish won the field that day, and Norse power in Ireland was decisively weakened. But the victory was bought in the blood she had foretold. Murracha fell, Dunlang fell. And old Brian Boru, praying in his tent after the battle was already won, was cut down by a fleeing enemy. Aibell had told them the price, and the price was paid in full. There is no single Banshee, and there is no single way she looks. The most careful study of her was made by the folklorist Patricia Lysott. She gathered hundreds of accounts from across Ireland and laid them side by side. Out of that mass of testimony, a few recurring shapes emerge, and they do not agree with one another. The Banshee is not one figure, she is a cluster of them. In some accounts she is young and beautiful, a woman dressed in green or in grey, lovely and sorrowful at once. In others she is the opposite. She is an old hag of the Gaelic type, bent and ancient and terrible to look at. And there is a third form, the one Lysott found most distinctive. She is small and dark-clad, seated near a doorway or a stream in the night. She combs out long hair that falls white or red around her shoulders. That comb carries its own warning. In the folklore, a comb left lying on the ground may be hers. To pick it up is to invite her misfortune into your home. Some say she was combing her hair as a mark of her otherworldly nature. Others tie it to the old custom of combing the hair of the dead before burial. Either way, the lesson was plain. A comb found by the road was best left exactly where it lay. Her names shift as her shape does, from one county to the next. In Wexford, Carlow, and Wicklow she was called Enbive, rendered as the bow. In Waterford she was the Bibe, across parts of Leinster, Tipperary, and Mayo she was the Ben Kinche, the keening woman. Her cry there was said to be so piercing that it could crack the glass in the windows. And in Cork and Currai she was rarely seen at all. There the people knew her only as a voice in the dark, a wail with no face behind it. That may be the most frightening form of all. Behind the fairy woman of folklore stands something older and far more dangerous. To find the Banshee's deepest root, you have to leave the cottages behind. You have to go back to the war literature of early Ireland and to a goddess named Badb. Badb was one of the Morina, the war goddess figures sometimes grouped with Macha, Enevian, Anund, or the Morian herself. Badb's own name has been read as crow and as one who boils, and both fit her. She was the goddess of battle and slaughter and fate. She haunted the field as a hooded crow, screaming above the dying. She did not merely watch wars. In the oldest sense, she was war. In that role she takes a shape we have already glimpsed at Clontarf. She becomes the washer at the ford. The most famous account belongs to Cu Chulainn, the greatest hero of the Ulster cycle, on the morning of his last battle. Omens crowded his final ride. His mother offered him wine, and 3 times it turned to blood in the cup before it reached his lips. Then he came to a ford, and there he saw her. A young woman knelt at the water, thin and pale, washing and wringing a heap of clothing. The clothes were stained crimson, and she wept and keened over them as she worked. He asked her whose bloodied garments she washed. The answer was his own. She was washing the clothes that Cu Chulainn would die in, and the sight of her was a sentence already passed. He knew the omen for what it was. He was too proud to turn back from it, and he rode on toward the enemy. The trap closed by his own honor. Further along the road, 3 hags sat roasting a dog over a fire and called him to share the meal. Cu Chulainn was bound by one sacred prohibition never to refuse hospitality, and by another never to eat the flesh of a dog. Either choice would break a vow and strip his protection. He ate, and his strength drained out of him. Mortally wounded soon after, he bound himself upright to a standing stone with his own belt. He meant to die on his feet, still facing his foes. His enemies did not dare come near. Only when a crow settled on his shoulder did they believe the hero was finally dead. That may be one of the deep roots of the Banshee. Patricia Lai sought records that in some parts of Ireland the Banshee is still called the Badb, the same word, the same name. Over centuries, figures like this may have helped shape the later spirit who weeps for a single family. The bloody armor and the crow's wings fell away, and what was left was a voice grieving at a door. But the thing, she was never changed. She was always the one who knows your death before you do. Ireland is not the only land to keep such a figure. In the Scottish Highlands, she is the Ben Nye, the little washerwoman, the washer at the ford grown into her own legend. She kneels at the lonely stream and washes the grave clothes of those about to die. Her look is stranger than the Irish banshees. She is described with a single nostril, a single great tooth, and webbed feet like a duck's. She is said to be the ghost of a woman who died in childbirth. She is doomed to wash at the river until the day she would naturally have died. She can be bargained with, but the bargain is dangerous. If a person can creep up and seize her before she sees them, she must grant their wishes and answer their questions. But she will ask her own questions in return, and any lie told to her brings ruin. Alongside her stands the Cineach, the weeping one. She is heard sobbing by waterfalls before a death, and she is never to be approached at all. Wales has its own criers too. The Cu Chulainn is a groaning heard along the coast before a death, a sound rather than a shape. And the Gracha Ribbon is a hideous hag who wails for the old Welsh families at the window in the night. The Banshee did not stay safely inside folk tales. She walks through the written memoirs of real people, and they set her down as a thing that truly happened. They had no wish to be laughed at. The first belongs to Anne, Lady Fanshawe, an Englishwoman traveling in Ireland during the upheavals of the 17th century. She and her husband stayed as guests in the castle of Lady Honora O'Brien. On the first night, around 1 in the morning, a voice woke her. She drew back the curtain and saw a woman leaning in at the window, lit by the full moon. The figure was dressed in white, with red hair and a pale and ghastly face. It cried out aloud in a tone she had never heard 3 times. Then it was gone, with a sigh more like wind than breath. The word the figure cried was strange to her English ear. Later readers have heard in it the Irish Okan, an old cry of grief that means little more than alas. To Lady Fanshawe the body seemed less like flesh than like a thick cloud at the window. In the morning her hostess came to her, pale and sleepless. A cousin of the O'Briens had died in the house at 2 o'clock that night. When any of that family is dying, the lady explained, the shape of a woman appears at the window until the end. She had simply forgotten the custom when she gave her guest the finest room. The second account is even fuller, and it carries us back to that exception about music. Around 1772, the Reverend Charles Bunworth lay dying at Buttevant in County Cork. He was a Protestant clergyman, and so by the strict rule of blood the Banshee should never have come for him at all. But Bunworth was also a celebrated harper and a patron of the wandering Irish musicians. The music, it seems, was enough. His own great-grandson, the folklorist Thomas Crofton Croker, set the events down and named living witnesses to swear to them. About a week before the end, a servant named Kavanagh was sent out for medicine. He came back shaken to his core. As he passed through the glen of Ballybeg, he said, a woman had walked beside him the whole way. She keened and screeched and clapped her hands, her long white hair loose about her shoulders. She spoke the Reverend's name aloud, again and again. At the old abbey she left him. She sat beneath a tree that lightning had struck and folded her cloak around her. She keened so bitterly that it went through the heart to hear it. The Reverend's daughter told him to say nothing and frighten no one. The night before Bunworth died, the proof came for everyone. A low moaning and a clapping of hands rose outside the house. The men went out and searched the bright, straight road in the moonlight and found no one. They came back to be told the sounds had only grown louder while they were gone. As the door of the sick room closed, the moaning and the clapping began once more. By the first light of morning the Reverend was dead. The Banshee had kept her watch to the end. How old is she, truly? The belief is older than its late medieval written appearances, and may reach back into early Irish tradition. From there it runs unbroken down the centuries. It survived the coming of Christianity and the fall of the Gaelic order. It survived even the slow death of the Irish language across much of the country. When the Irish left during the hunger and the hard years and crossed the ocean, the Banshee crossed with them. Her wail was reported in the coal valleys of Pennsylvania, far from any fairy mound. She kept faith with the old families who carried her in their blood. What kept her alive for so long was not fear alone. The Banshee answered a need. Death is the one certainty that gives no warning. It is the loss that always arrives too early and too suddenly. The Banshee softened that cruelty. She turned the unbearable shock of death into something foretold, something a family could brace against. Her cry was dreadful, but it was also a gift of time, and time is the one thing that dying are never given. So she remains on a quiet night in the old country. The wind sometimes drops, and the long low cry seems to lift from beyond the wall. The oldest part of the mind still knows what it is hearing. It is the woman of the mound. It is the keen sung before the death. It is the voice that has wailed for the families of Ireland since before there were books to write her down. In the stories, it has never once been wrong. That was the story of the Banshee, the woman of the mound whose cry runs ahead of the grave. If her voice stayed with you, then help keep these old stories alive. Subscribe and join the Myth Keepers, because some stories must never be forgotten.